Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John's report. It's for the 16th of November. A pretty mild day. I mean, pretty much finished flat. Probably should have performed a bit better given what we were seeing from NBI readings, rising DOC, the fact that we're still in this uptrend move. But ironically, positive extreme on almost no movement. And part of this is, as it would appear, some of the headwinds that the market faces are becoming more and more prevalent as time goes on. The NQ, NASDAQ performing just a little bit weaker, and literally right on the ABM becomes very easy. Below that ABM value at 16,192.50. More short than long, and no crossover of magenta over the yellow. So wouldn't take much to see white move back above red, and if that magenta comes back down, we could be in for a change of direction. Look at that euro, just continues to collapse. Everything you can do wrong vis-a-vis the pandemic setup, most of Europe has done wrong. They had Sweden as the odd man out that did everything exactly the opposite. No lockdowns. Free movement and everything, achieved their herd immunity and pretty much functioning normal. All the places that did the lockdowns, everything else, have not recovered, continue to have expressed number of cases, and seeing slight resurgence, whereas Sweden really isn't experiencing it. So everyone talks about empirical evidence. Well, in these cases, we actually have it. You see the same thing in the U.S. where blue states versus red states, and blue states are faring much poorer economically and everything else with their lockdowns and the mandates and things like that are far more restrictive, and the ones that are doing well, Florida and Texas, that they're just thriving. So it's a mixed bag, and but from a Europe standpoint, nothing's changing, and it's just only going to get worse as far as that goes, which ironically is still forcing people to move dollars to the U.S. The inflation concerns are still going to ripple through, not to mention the constraints of the economic policies limiting oil production, and that continue to have their impact, and oil is going to continue. Now, you'll get back and forth with build-ups and things like that, but overall, the ability to produce on any decent economic improvement does not exist now. And it's a huge reversal from just a year ago. And it's self-inflicted wound, as they say. Like I talked about, this is a concern where the Fed loses control and rates start to rise, whether they want them to or not. And we expected this to come all the way back down, and I expect it to even make new lows as it goes forward. Fact of what we're seeing from, on the ground situation where inflation is not transitory, and the bottlenecks that they've created artificially are only making it worse. So the only benefit to that is you have cryptos as well as other mitigating factors that can help. In fact, we should look at that because Bitcoin's been an easy one after the lovely double top coming back down to come back up, had the nice buy setup that came through there, and then it rolled right over, creating a sell setup and going right back to exactly the same 64 level that's been listed on there. You can have ETH mark. We have positive extremes for that one as well. Not as negative from a daily standpoint yet, but intraday looking very weak from that standpoint. If we go to our 50K, it closed out the long setup and went into short mode. Made new equity highs with that. Might as well look at that performance report. So 288 profit factor, 398 on the longs, 182 on the short side. Currently in the short side trade, almost a 60% win rate from the short side. From a periodic returns, it's helpful to see that from a monthly standpoint. Of course, this is trading just the 10 contracts with no scaling or anything like that. And the performance graph, putting it at equity highs. I did mention that I would go through and show the default settings. I did put on the Skype chat the new update for the Opus T Opus 2T, so that you'll be able to see what the inputs are. I've added some new ones as well from the short side. I will scroll through this. The default settings that I put in there are these same readings. So you can go through and see the nice feature about it is, for instance, when you have the orange buy on, everything until you get to the next buy are all of the inputs related to just that orange buy setup. So that makes it easy from an optimization because you can select just those values, go up and down as desired, and see where optimal setups fit in between. As it scrolls down, we did some short setups as well within that, and I called them just cell. So when you see the SEL, that's the cell side configurations. And, most of that's just the above and below the magenta value, and typically we put those at 33 for the most part, but there can be flexibility on that, sometimes 30 being better, or even a move below 35 to 38, depending on the configuration, can work within that. And then we get into the shorts, various multiples, all the way down to the final list. So there you have it from an input standpoint, and those are the defaults that are set up on there. From a 5K standpoint, again, it still fits on one. I mean, they actually got pretty slow, but it was consistent. We started off with the pre-market pump that was all on positive extremes, and we have those marked, and sure enough, we get sell signal pretty darn quick right after the market started. It was pretty fast, and really didn't move much against it before dipping down. I pointed out this one, which is that pivot of magenta below the 25. Very effective when in a short or weak configuration. Happened to be corresponding beautifully to a DOC setup here where green cyan meet with the orange spike, and then proceeded to dip nicely. Then when we pop back up, this is what I pointed out. When you have the rising magenta and red, but red leads the run, it's very weak setup, and usually as soon as it pivots, you start to get the move lower. I often will take it as it starts to get, in this case, went above 50. We were at 45 and the next one. Once it got over 50, I jumped into it short, just upon seeing that, and sure enough, that led to a nice move, and then we just went nowhere. Sideways, and it was perfect within what the signaling was from the yellow dots, suggesting to stay with the short. And then once MBI white moved above it, the expectation was still to the zero at that point, below 50%, and sure enough, not only did it take the zero, proceeded to move even lower. We went across for a while, finally produced a little bit of a buy, but then immediately set up a sell with the magenta dots right there of clean setup. I was almost thinking that it might hold on because we didn't get the immediate weight crossover, but it happened pretty quick after that, and started across, but literally the magenta jumped back above it pretty quick, and it's got the immediate dip of orange below 7.5, and that's usually where you get a little bit of a turnaround setup, and that's exactly what happened, but didn't take long for a secondary sell with the white leading again, and another one that took place right as you're about to get the crossover there. And that led to a nice dip. Towards the end of the day, dip slightly below 23%. Could have been a little bit weaker with this reading, but there just wasn't a whole lot of action taking place. And then, of course, literally magenta crossing back above white and being above yellow at the same time that dip below 7.5 meant that you could just capture that open on that setup for the nice end of day turnaround for a few points going back. So all in all, I thought it was really good, very clean. Everything that we look for. Nice action, albeit slow. I would expect that it's a condition of the fact that you have so little shorting going on that you're not driving huge multiples up and down, so it's just the weight of things. And should there be a catalyst, though, I think that we can see that things could significantly. I know there was Goldman coming out with their projection of the year end being around 4,400 and we're at 4,680, so that would be a pretty significant drop. I think that it's a little premature until we actually get a signal for sell on that. So it's just a broad curse. If we put back up the daily, they're just literally talking about filling back into where this almost positive extreme started, right back there. So nothing too dramatic, I don't think. As always, though, I will update you on the Skype chat. Anything new develops and I have anything finished for you, I will certainly get it out to you. Trade well. We'll talk to you later.